So welcome. My name is Vikki. I am in recovery for codependency, chaos creating, controlling, fixing. Um, that's how I prefer to word it. It's really made the program come alive for me. It's really given me a new way of living by really digging into the work of the steps, uncovering like what's really my problem. I really, I thought, so from my perspective, Um, I thought an alcoholic was my problem. If that alcoholic could just get sober, then my problems would be solved. And it's interesting because the further we went along, that alcoholic did get sober, and that did not solve all my problems. And that was very confusing. So there was a period of time where um, when we think about insanity as doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, there was a period of time where I would say, like, I don't understand why I'm complaining about this job. Like, I could tell you all the really great things about this job that I had, how much I appreciated it, how much I loved it. So I really didn't want to be doing the things that I was doing, and I couldn't stop. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't just stop. And I understood alcoholism by this point. So it was actually a fairly good transition for me to apply these principles and this work to my life and my problems once I really began to understand my problem. So for me, when I feel the urge to fix or control, if I am not fully sold that I'm powerless, that my life is unmanageable, uh, then I'm not going to see, like, I'm like, I lose all power of choice. I'm taking somebody else through the work, and we are looking at their they're answering from their own perspective. And one of the questions is like, what are the 10 craziest things that you did? And the reality is, like, I have all sorts of crazy things. And that made me think I was an alcoholic. It made me think, like, because I did so many things that were just not normal human being things. A lot of them happened when I was drinking, but that's just drunkenness. Drunkenness is just what makes me do ridiculous things, that I wouldn't normally do. And the thing for me is, like, I'm stone cold sober and things are happening that are beyond my control that I don't understand. So that was really confusing for me. It was also confusing for me because I had a relationship with God, or I thought I had a relationship with God. And so coming to a place of understanding that I wasn't actually relying on God, that I wasn't actually getting my power from God, that I wasn't actually being fueled by God, that I wasn't actually being transformed the way God told me that I needed to be transformed. Um, you know, and there's always the conversation of like, well, can't just God just like do it? Can't God just like make me be how he wants me to be? He needs my participation. He's not just going to like make me do things against my will. So that was a significant piece for me. Was reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and there's some stories in there that are, some of them we read, and these are like pretty heartbreaking stories. There's Mr. Carpet Slippers on page 32. So he is a man of 30 doing a great deal of spree drinking. He's very nervous in the morning after these bouts, and he quiets himself with more liquor. He was ambitious to succeed in business, but saw that he could get nowhere at all if he drank. So he says he has to stop drinking it completely. Once he started, he had no control whatsoever. He made up his mind that until he had been successful in business and had retired, he would not touch another drop of alcohol. An exceptional man, he remained bone dry for 25 years and retired at the age of 55 after a successful and happy business career. Then he fell victim to a belief which practically every alcoholic has, that his long period of sobriety and self-discipline had qualified him to drink as other men. Out came his carpet slippers and a bottle. In 2 months, he was in a hospital, puzzled and humiliated. He tried to regulate his drinking for a while, making several trips to the hospital meantime. Then, gathering all his forces, he attempted to stop altogether and found he could not. Every means of solving his problem, which money could buy, was at his disposal. Every attempt failed. Though a robust man at retirement, he went to pieces quickly and was dead within 4 years. There's another story on the next page over. Jim. So Jim is a man who had a charming wife and family. He inherited a lucrative automobile agency. He had a commendable World War record. He was a very good salesman. Everybody liked him. He was intelligent, normal, except he had a nervous disposition. He did no drinking until he was 35. In a few years, he became so violent when intoxicated that he had to be committed. On leaving the asylum, he came into contact with the group, with us, it says. We told him what we know of alcoholism and the answer that we had found. He made a beginning. His family was reassembled and they began to work as a salesman for the business he had lost through drinking. All went well for a time, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. To his consternation, he found himself drunk half a dozen times in rapid succession. On each of these occasions, we worked with him, reviewing carefully what had happened. He agreed he was a real alcoholic and in serious condition. He knew he faced another trip to the asylum if he kept on. Moreover, he would lose his family for whom he had a deep affection. Yet he got drunk again. We asked him to tell us exactly how it happened. So he tells the story. He's like, oh, I got irritated. That's a resentment. And it's because here he is working for this company that he used to own. So that irked him. He had a few words with the boss, nothing serious. I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car. On the way, I felt hungry, so I stopped at a roadside place where they have a bar. I had no intention of drinking. I just thought I would get a sandwich. I also had the notion that I might find a customer for a car at this place, which was familiar. He'd been going to this place for years. I had eaten there many times during the months I was sober. I sat down at the table, ordered a sandwich and a glass of milk. Still no thought of drinking. I ordered another sandwich and decided to have another glass of milk. Suddenly, the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach. I ordered a whiskey and poured it into the milk. I vaguely sensed I was not being too smart, but felt reassured that I was taking it on a full stomach. The experiment went so well, I ordered another whiskey and poured it into more milk. This didn't seem to bother me, so I tried another. Thus began one more journey to the asylum for Jim. Here was the threat of commitment, the loss of family and position, to say nothing of that intense mental and physical suffering which drinking always caused him. He had so much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside in favor of the foolish idea that he could take whiskey if only he mixed it with milk. Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? And so there's another story too. Well, there's a few more. There's Fred. So we have Fred, and then we have another guy. So Fred doesn't admit the first step or believe in the second step. And then we have another guy, the jaywalker, which is actually like kind of my favorite. The jaywalker, like, is such a great, sorry, that isn't he the jaywalker? Anyway, all these stories have one thing in common. When I was reading them, I was like, oh, that won't take long to summarize all the stories. But I read them instead of summarizing, so that didn't work. But all the stories have in common is people who did not enlarge their spiritual condition. Enlarging our spiritual condition does not mean having more information, being armed with more facts and having more information. That's a grave misconception. I can't actually know more about the Bible. I can't know more about God. I can't know more about alcoholism, knowing more about myself, understanding my childhood trauma. Like, none of that stuff is going to keep me from those insane thoughts that happened to me. Fred, I'm going to read from my perspective as codependent, chaos creator. So Fred is minding his business, had no trouble refusing gossip, began to wonder if I'd not been making too hard work of a simple matter. At the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon, I went to my hotel and dressed leisurely for dinner. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to my mind that it would be nice to start worrying about the future and comparing myself to others. Nothing more. I watched hoarders on TV, scrolled Facebook, and then I found another person to help. I started texting all those people that I know, like maybe they're not doing okay and I should check in with them all. After dinner, after dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me to control my husband. I didn't like the way that he was doing this or that or the other, and I decided I needed to let him know he needs to do things better. Can't just picture myself calling from the hotel, like, how are the kids? Did you feed them this meal? Did you feed them that meal? Like, what kind of activity? What time did they go to bed? Um, I have a shadowy, sorry. So I remember throwing the past in my husband's face and I kept it going. I have a shadowy recollection of going to work and stopping at my colleague's desk. Then I made plans for the whole weekend with friends to escape. And so overscheduling myself, not taking care of myself, getting to bed super late. These are all the things that I do. I put paperwork aside. I ignored the things that I needed to do, but then I decided to watch TV all night instead. Then came the back pain and eczema outbreak and physical suffering. The alcoholic might wind up in the hospital or the asylum with unbearable and physical suffering also. But me, just as much, the codependent, the chaos creator, controller fixer, we see so many physical manifestations in our body that it's truly unbelievable. I have such this had in my active addiction have such this fixated idea that you need me. And it wasn't until I set aside these ideas. The crazy thought isn't that like doing all these things is going to make me feel better. The insanity of it is I know it actually doesn't make me feel better, and yet I still go there. Just the same as the alcoholic, like armed with all these facts, armed with historical evidence of where this is going to go, does the same thing, knowing that this actually isn't going to bring me ease and comfort. We know. So when we fully come to this place of conceding that there's got to be a better way, can I become truly convinced that God is the solution to my problems, that God is the solution to the problem inside of me, not like the external problems, although God can be the solution to those too, but that this unrest and disease inside of me can actually be solved through a true relationship with God. And part of my denial for most of my recovery life is that I had a relationship with God that I really didn't have. Denial isn't just like, for me, that was like a significant piece of denial. There was a period of time where denial was like, oh, my husband doesn't drink that much. It's not such a big deal. But a significant denial that kept me sick for such a super long time is that I have a relationship with God that I really didn't have. That I'm maintaining a spiritual condition because I go to church, because I do all these good things, because I'm doing service, and maybe I'm attending recovery meetings, and I know lots about God, and I can talk about the Bible, and I can tell you about a verse that changed my life, and that is going to keep me sober, that's going to keep me in this new spiritual plane that the big book tells me that I can live in. So truly, it's an active God that I'm looking for. To-do lists. January is a great time for resolutions. I'm going to get physically fit. And I think that's really important, actually, for me to take care of my physical body. But taking care of my physical body isn't going to solve the problem inside of me. There's a collective bunch of things when I completely give my life over to God and say I'm ready. And then I'm willing to like continue to hold on to God and to allow God to like instruct me and direct my path. Which means sometimes it means really hard conversations. Sometimes it means like facing things that I really didn't want to face because I like to live in I really like to live in false pretenses. It's kind of a natural state for me. It's really challenging. And that's part of like people pleasing or wanting everybody around me to be happy. And so I'm just going to pretend that we're happy because I don't want to give you a hard time. And so, really, truly, this sustainable sobriety, emotional sobriety, physical sobriety is, an act of mercy that God is able to like give me when I am able to like let down my shoulders, let down my guard, and be really honest with myself and the world around me about where I'm at and who I am. There's an interesting concept that John and I were talking about this morning of like, having these ideas about how I need to live my life and how I need to be seen. And then like, just like accepting, you know, I'll be seen however God wants me to be seen. Really, am I willing to just like let the things come up that need to come up and then let God sort out, you know, there might be praise, there might be criticism, but am I going to let God sort it out in me? Um, and the last part that I think is really where this comes truly to a full understanding for me is by working with others, by like being intentional to carry this message to others and trying to communicate it and attempting to like take others through the work without giving them advice or fixing them or trying to control them or thinking that I have better ideas. Um, you know, the reality is like I'm only really managing my own restlessness and irritability and trying to manage my own emotions in such a superficial way. Like it's so false. It really doesn't work. And so I need this act of God, which I get when I take these steps, when I give over my life to the care of God and say, like, yeah, you get to be in charge. Like, I mean, you are in charge anyway, but I'm going to give you this invitation. And, the work tells us every morning, what are my instructions for today? What is it that I need to do today? Who am I supposed to reach out to? Who am I not supposed to reach out to? Maybe there's people I'm actually not supposed to reach out to. But can you give me my instructions for today? So that's what I have today. Yeah. And, I think for me today, it comes out of this concept comes out of taking somebody else through the work, but also looking at my own life and seeing like I have this perpetual habit of being really busy. And so what does it look like for me to really look at, okay, what's in my week? What's important? How many things have I committed to? And, not even just looking at like the time commitments, which is all I used to look at, like, oh, I have this free evening or I have this free day, or, oh, sure, I could do that Bible study on Friday morning. Is it going to have preparation time? Do I need to do homework? When would I schedule in that homework? When would I get that done? Where's my Sabbath time? What time am I setting aside for me to have quiet time with God? Where is my silence coming from? Like, when am I engaging in silence and solitude? Because I think that's an important spiritual practice for me also. Silence and solitude are just so foreign to me. And like that's very much a challenge for me. And so it has to be part of it. It has to be part of my life. It has to be part of my routine. And when I overschedule myself, it doesn't work. And so that requires like hard decisions. And I'm not good at making hard decisions on my own. I need direction from God to make those hard decisions. And God does give the right thought or action when I ask.